Hello, welcome to Cocos Creator Introduction Class 6. Today we're going to learn a little bit about class. So let's go to the TypeScript. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to comment out this console log here. I don't want to have any spam in my log. The class works a little bit like a type to start with. So we're going to use the class keyword, and I'm going to make a student for my example. So I have a class student. And just like with the type, I can add some properties in here. So I want to add a name, which is a string. And I want to add an age, which is a number. And I'm going to add whether the student is active or not. And I want that to be a Boolean. Now I get some errors here. So let's mouse over and says, name has no initializer, is not definitely assigned in the constructor. Okay, we're going to get back to what the constructor is, but for now it says I need to assign a value right here. So let's say Bob, and Bob's name is 35, and Bob is not a student. And age, I tried to put a string into my age, so TypeScript is complaining that it should be a number, obviously. So I'm going to do like this. And now it will work. So how do I create a student? Up here I would say let person2 is a type of person, and I could assign all the values. Down here I'm going to say let student1 equals new student. This is how I create an instance of a class. I use the new keyword. So try to do this on your computer. Just like before, we can put our student in the console. So I'm going to write console, if I can spell it, console.log student1. I'm going to compile my code, Control-Shift-B, build, and it's building. And I go to my PowerShell and I write node o-tab type.js, and it outputs my student. So far it looks just like a type. But let's add some more functionality here. On a student, I have something called a constructor. So I'm going to write a constructor here. Inside my constructor, I can say I want some initial values when I make a new student here. So I can say something like name should be a string. So this function it works a little bit like a function, but it's a special kind of function here. Now because I've made constructor and I have a parameter here, my new student down here complains. It says you have to put one argument in when you try to create a new student, but you put 0. So now I need to put Eric here. And now it works. So let's try to run this code. Build it. And run it. Nothing has changed. It still says Bob down here, but I'm inputting Eric. That's because inside my constructor, I get the new name, but I'm not saving it. I do nothing in here. Let's just for now rename this name here to something else. I'm going to name in. Inside my constructor, in the code inside these curly brackets, I'm going to say this dot name equals name in. This is a keyword in TypeScript. It means the thing I have as a property on my class. So when I say this.name, it is the name up here we're talking about. When I say name in, it is the parameter in my constructor here. So let me rename name in again. I go mouse over, no, cursor on it, and I press F2. I'm going to rename this to name. So now this one says this.name equals name. The first half is the name of my class, and the second half is my parameter here. I want to quickly show you what happens if I did not press F2. If I rename this to name test just by writing here, a lot of problems happen because this name here no longer exists, and so I cannot assign to it. So when I rename something, I always want to put my cursor on it and use the F2. That will rename everything in my code for me. Every reference will be renamed as well. So now when I use my constructor down here and I insert Eric, my constructor will take that name and save it as the name on my student. Let's try to save this, build it, go to our PowerShell, and now it says Eric here, just like I wanted to. But because now it is mandatory that I have to put a name when I make a new student, I do not need to put a name up here anymore, so I can delete that. And that was the bug we had before. So let me try to remove this from the age. Now if I move over my age, it says age is not set to anything here, and it is not set to anything in the constructor, but it has to be set to something. TypeScript doesn't care what it's set to as long as it's something. So I would like you to add that to the constructor here. The way we add more than one thing is comma and then another thing. So add the age to the constructor and make it work. If you've been paying attention, this shouldn't be too difficult. After name is a type of string in my constructor, I write age is a type number. And then I need to add one more line of code down here that says this.age equals age. And now my new student down here complains because it says I have to have two parameters here. So I'm just going to say Eric is 36 years old, like that. Now I can save, build, and then go to my PowerShell, and I run the code. And it says I have Eric, he's 36, and he's not active. So what is the point of this? Why not just use a type like we did before? Well, one thing I like in class is that I can, if I went down here and I said student1 dot age equals student1 dot age plus 1. This would be legal to do, and it works. But let's imagine that I don't want anybody else to be able to change the age of a student. I only want I want some logic to make sure that this works okay. So now I'm going to go up in front of my name. I can choose, is it only the student itself that can change the name, or can anybody do it? I'm going to say for name, anybody should be able to do that. So I'm going to write public here. Public means everybody can do it. For my age, I'm going to say only my students should be able to change my age, because I want some things going on when that happens. So I'm going to write private here. And let's say I want the active to be private as well. Now you can see there's an error down here. It says you're trying to set the age of the student, but it's private. You cannot do that. So we need to remove this line of code again. That was not allowed anymore. So what do we do if we want to change the age? Well, I do not want to just be able to change the age to anything I want. I want to say, if the person has a birthday, the age should increase by 1. So I'm going to make a function inside here But I'm not going to use the function keyword. I can just do this, create it, and write some code. So because it's inside a class, it's no longer called a function, it's called a method. And all the methods I can also choose, should they be public or private. So I would like my method here to be public. And as we talked about before, we should add return types to functions, and we should also do that on methods. And if we don't want it to return anything, we use the keyword void here. So it's public, birthday, and return type void. And what do I want to do inside my birthday? I want to increase the age by 1. So I'm going to say this.age equals this.age plus 1. And I could do something fun here, like say console.log, and let's use this string interpolation. Happy birthday, and put our name here. So now every time I have a birthday, it will increase the age and it will say happy birthday to the person. So let's save this. Let's go down here and say student 1 dot. Because I have created this method, I can now select it here. Birthday. It is a method, so I need to remember parentheses here. Save, build, back to my PowerShell, run the code. Happy birthday, Eric. And after that, when I output my student, the age is 37. That is simple logic for now. There's one thing I want to change here. I want to look just for a minute at this line here. Oh, let's turn these off. I want to look at this line. This can become annoying if we have to increase something by 1. This is a lot of text to write, because this is something we have to do so often in TypeScript. There's a faster way to write this. So the first thing we could do is this dot age, and then we can use something called plus equals 1. We'll comment this line out. This says take this dot age and add 1. Take it plus 1 and assign it back to this. So this line and this line is the same thing. Let me add a space here. So if I wanted to increase by 10, this would make sense. But because exactly plus 1 is something we have to do really, really, really often, there's an even faster way to write this. This dot age plus plus. That's it. It increments it by 1. So I want to do that instead. Let's just make sure that this works. So I will build. Go to my PowerShell, and it still works. Happy birthday, age 37. I set it to 36 to begin with, and then I increment it by 1 here. Now you might be thinking, when should I use type and when should I use class? And for our purposes, we're going to say a type here and a class here. Let's change this to type and move this one up here. Both of them can have values. So let's take, and then let's make them all bigger like that. My type can have values and my class can have values. Let's make this one blue. Both of them could have values. We saw that. My class can also have logic. So that is the difference for our purposes. this is not strictly speaking true. There are some more fundamental things going on, but this is how we're going to think about it in this course. Now it's time to use this new class we just learned about. So I'm going to open my Explorer, and inside my org tag up here, I'm going to click New File, and I'm going to create a file called org.ts. It's important to me that it's with a capital O. That is a convention. Just like types started with an uppercase, classes start with an uppercase. So now I have an org TypeScript here. And I'm going to write class org, because that is what we're going to work on. We already see an error up here. We're going to look at that a little bit later, but let's first try to add some properties to the org. So I'm going to go to my org tag here. I'm going to find my org type here, and I'm just going to copy all of these. Copy, paste. And now it's no longer a comma at the end, it's an end of the line. So I need to change all of these into semicolons. And we already know why these have underline. It's because it's a property I'm adding, but it is not set either when I initialize it or in my constructor. So let's hurry up and add a constructor here. And in my constructor, I want to have a name. So I would like you to set all of the values up here except the name. I want that in the constructor. Let's add a name here. Name is a string, and I'm going to say this.name equals name. That was one line too many. So now I don't have a problem with my name up here. Health. Okay, we need to assign a value to health. So I'm just going to say it's 6. Max health. I'm going to say that is also 6. Status. I'm going to say healthy. And is happy. I'm going to say true. That's it. I hope you had that by yourself as well. Now I want the max health not to be defined here. I want the max health to be in my code, in my constructor. I wanted to set it to the same as the health. So I'm going to delete max health here. And in my constructor, I'm going to say this dot health equals, no, this dot max health equals this dot health. And now none of them will complain. I think we should add some visibility up here. So public and private to these. I would like the name to be public and everything else to be private. So please do that. Name public, everything else private. Here's a little tip for the video only. If you want to do the same thing in many lines, I can hold down the Alt key on my keyboard and press more places here. Now I'm editing 4 different places, so I can write private here and escape. And now I just got it automatically on all 4 lines. It's time to look at this error we have up here. It says duplicate identifier. And the other identifier is actually an org tag here. I also have a type org. I have the same word in 2 different files. That's a problem because by default, TypeScript looks in all the files we have in our folder and it says, oh, let me just include all of it in one big project. And we don't always want that. So we would like a way in our file here to decide, in our org tag, to decide which other files, which other classes do we want to include in this project. So up here on my org class, I'm going to write export before my class. That means this class is ready to be exported. It will not automatically be imported everywhere else. It will only be imported if we specifically tell TypeScript to import it. So now I can save the org class, and I can go over to my org attack. And instead of having a big org type here, I can just delete all of this. And now in my room, for example, here, I have an org, and it says, I cannot find this name anymore. And I can mouse over, oh, there's a quick fix. Let's try to click that. And it says, do you want to import from the org file? Yes, I do. And now it will write this import line that I just talked about. It will import the class org from the file org. And now we got a lot of new interesting errors here. So let's have a look. Before, when I created an org, I had to supply all of this information. I don't need to do that anymore. Now I can say here, new org. And what did we need when we created an org? We need the name. So I'm going to take the name down here and put up here. And let me comment these 3 lines out. I would like you to add the other 2 orgs to our org array. Okay, so I'm just gonna copy this line a few times, change to the second org name and to the third org name, and then I can delete these 3 lines of code we had here. We have one more bug. We have some bugs, yes. Let's look at them. I want to be able to get the max health to show in my game or whatever it is, but I do not want anywhere else to be able to set it, because that can cause some problems if there was some logic in here that had to happen before I set it. So what we want to do is we want to get but not to set. Luckily in TypeScript there's a way to do that. So I'm going to write public and I'm going to write get. That means we are allowed to get something only. We're not allowed to set anything. And then I'm going to write, I want to get max health. I want that to return a number. And the thing I want to return is return this dot max health. And now TypeScript complains. It says you're using this word 2 times. That is not okay. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to rename my property up here. So I put my cursor on it and I press F2. And we're going to rename it to start with an underscore. It's a convention everybody uses that as soon as something is private, if we have a private property, we start with an underscore. The official style guide says that's not what you're supposed to do, but that is what everybody does, so we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to do the same with status and is happy because they're also private. So this one says create a get for max health and just return max health. Let's save this and let's go back to org attack. And now this works. But if you notice, there is no parenthesis here. When we have this keyword get, TypeScript translates it as if it was just a property on my class. So I didn't have to change anything over here. I made a new property and I made a getter, and all my old code just works. We still have one problem here with the health. So that's a challenge for you. Please make sure that that works in the same way as max health. I'm going to go to my org. I'm going to say public get health, return a number, return this dot. Did I not? I didn't do that yet. This dot health. Let's go up here and rename health as well, because I forgot to do that. Save this, go back to org attack, and now this code works. And let's prove it works by building. Go to my PowerShell. I'm going to write node out, and inside that I want to run org attack, and everything still works. If you want some more challenges in the org class, you can create these methods. First, heal. So it says heal 2 hit points, but we are not allowed to go above max health. Also here, give it damage, just subtract the damage from the health. If you want more, you can go to the next challenge, and that is the status should change depending on, is it at full health or damaged or dead. And the final challenge for now is we cannot heal a dead orc. So this is optional homework, or if you get bored in class because you're fast. The final thing for today is another challenge. Create a treasure class and use that everywhere in the code in our org attack. We started that last time, but we did not finish. That was all for today, so I'll see you next week.